Alright, welcome back to another Dolphin Computer Service video. Today we're going to be discussing more about the display connectors that we use for our monitors. This is the more modern versions that we use. This is relating back to the video I did previously on getting a monitor for yourself. I'll have a link somewhere in the corner about that to get a better understanding if you need more clarification about that kind of thing. So let's get right into it here. So first of all, we are going to start here on our left. We have VGA, which stands for Video Graphics Array. This one is a very old standard. It's barely used anymore. In fact, a lot of graphics cards and computers and even monitors don't even come with it anymore. It's typically this blue connector, and even the body, the part that you physically grab, is blue. Some of them even have little thumb screws to help keep them in place. This is completely analog. There's nothing digital about this. It will do 1080p as its maximum resolution. And I know that personally because my Nintendo Switch has an HDMI plug to a VGA adapter, and it works. Usually at this resolution, the colors are a little washed out, and that also tells you how old my television is, but that is what it is. Like I said, also a lot of new computers and TVs don't come with this anymore, so you will need an adapter if you want to connect something with this style of video connection to a modern television or monitor or even projector. So this only does video, so you will have to use a separate audio cable, whether it's a Toslink via optical or your standard 3.5mm headphone jack, to run your audio to whatever you need to do. And that's basically it for VGA. To sum it up, it's a old standard that's no longer used anymore and only does video, and it is analog only. So now we have DVI. DVI stands for Digital Video Interface. This one is a hybrid, and it is the successor to VGA because this does both digital and audio. It's also no longer used that much anymore. A lot of graphics cards and TVs and monitors might come with it still, but again, it's a dying standard. We have moved on to a lot more better things that do the job much better with more capabilities. Like I said, this one is a analog and digital interface, and believe it or not, this, as the name suggests, digital video interface, it only does video. But however, depending on the cable you use or the adapter you use, you can actually get audio out of it because of the analog part that is included with the DVI. It really depends on the manufacturer of the graphics card or computer or the adapter that you are using. Also, DVI is a little bit more convoluted. There's different versions to it. As you see here, this is the female part, the part that you plug in with the cable, So we have the single link, we have the dual link, we have another dual link called DVI-I, then we have different versions of DVI-A, another version of a single link, and then we have the dual link, which includes also a USB, as you see here with the 4 pins on the side here. The max resolution for the single link, which is any one of these here, would be 1920 by 1200, and it is at 60 hertz, meaning it refreshes 60 times a second. 1920 by 1200 is just under 2K. It's basically just a step above 1080p. If you use the dual link, however, which is either this one over here or like this one over here with the USB, which they're essentially more or less the same. It depends on the connector you're using. It'll go all the way up to 2560 by 1600 at 60 hertz. So you're just above the 2K resolution mark. if you go to lower resolutions like 1080p, you could actually get higher refresh rates. I've heard that you can get 144 hertz out of 1080p. So it is possible, but again, this is a dying standard and only officially does video. But again, manufacturers from graphics cards, to monitors and even people that make adapters have found a way to get audio out of it. But it is technically an unofficial way. You will usually see this on high-end graphics cards sometimes. Like I believe the older 1060 has it. I even think the 2060 Super has it, depending on who makes it. It really depends on the manufacturer and what they want to add up or not. So it also depend. You also have to know which one you're getting, because as you see here, they look identical and they perform the same function, but they really don't. But they're really not. As you see, the one with the USB is slightly bigger than the regular DVI. So you have to, when you're looking at cables and going to buy one, you really have to be careful about what you're going to get. So going back here, we now have mini Displayport, which is the same as Displayport except in a smaller package. So Displayport here, we'll start with Displayport, because Displayport, the mini one, also shares a connection with the Thunderbolt series, which we'll talk about later in a minute. But Displayport, the latest version is the 1.4. There's actually going to be later on this year a 2.0 version that was delayed, but it is supposedly coming out this year. So the maximum resolution for the Displayport is 4K either at 120 hertz or 8K at 60 hertz. So again, you're seeing this trade-off here of whether if you want higher resolutions or higher frame rates. It really depends on what you're doing. So if you're just a typical user that wants to, watches Netflix, just the regular Displayport will work. But if you go to the 2.0, this is all theoretical according to the article I'm reading here, that the 2.0 is capable of up to 16K at 60 hertz. So what do you need 16K for? Well, if you're like working on a map, or you're an advertiser that has to blow up images to large proportions, like you're putting it on a billboard or you're putting it on the Goodyear blimp for the giant advertising, you need a lot of resolution so you can get that small image and work it up to something larger so that you can see it. So again, as part of our services here at Dolphin for consultation, we will usually recommend getting a Displayport no matter what, because my favorite part about Displayport is you could daisy chain multiple monitors together. This is what I mean. So instead of having to run separate cables for each monitor to the PC, you could just plug in one and then plug in another one from your spare one that you have, and then on and on. You could do this, I believe, up to 6 times, again, depending on the resolution you want. You could also go up to, I believe, 200 hertz was I've seen the maximum for lower resolutions, such as 1080p. 144 is easily doable on a Displayport cable. And this is part of the reason why I normally recommend, because even if you're just scrolling through web pages, using a higher refresh rate usually is easier on the eyes, and you actually notice the difference. And some people, once they go to a high refresh rate, they actually find it very hard to even use like their phone, which has a lower refresh rate, or their TV, which has a lower one. So it really spoils you. Not exactly necessary, but if you're on the computer all day or you're playing a fast action game, like, your eyes will really thank you for it. So now, when we talked about here, the mini Displayport, there is another one that, in cooperation with a bunch of companies such as Intel and Apple, actually, we're the big contributors to this, which is the Thunderbolt series. So the Thunderbolt, you need to have this little logo here, which looks like a little lightning bolt with an arrowhead at the end, to know you have a Thunderbolt. So the Thunderbolt connector piggybacks off of the mini Displayport, which is this one that you see right here. So just to clarify, a mini Displayport and a full-size Displayport are the same thing, more or less. It's just that they crammed it into something smaller for, you know, like a MacBook or a laptop or a netbook. That's why these were made. And a lot of these, like VGA and HDMI and even DVI, have mini versions of those regular size ports, because again, sometimes to cram in a full size VGA or a full size DVI would take up a lot of real estate that is at a premium on the side of a laptop. So going back to the Displayport here, you need to have this little insignia on it in order for it to work as a display, as a Thunderbolt connection, because Thunderbolt does a lot more than just output a display. You could actually send data with it. The Thunderbolt 1 and 2 series were 10 gigabits and 20 gigabits respectively. So what did you need a Thunderbolt for with all that bandwidth? Basically, if you're transferring large files between computers, you could run multiple displays with that amount of bandwidth. One thing that I used to do a lot of with these older ones, especially in 2011 when they came out, which is when the Thunderbolt 1 was introduced, is you can get two Thunderbolt connectors, plug in the one MacBook to the other, and do the data transfer that way. And it would, even people that had full 500 gigabyte hard drives with no capacity left to add anything, it would literally transfer in minutes the whole thing. That's how fast these connections were. So a little bit more about the Thunderbolt connector. It was, as we said, introduced in 2011. Its maximum resolution was 2560 by 1600 at 60 hertz, so just above the 2K mark for your screen here. In fact, a little fun fact here: the Mac Mini that I'm using to record this was one of the first to have it. It was a 2011, and it uses the Thunderbolt connector to output a 2K display. And that was one of the ways that they promoted it, because if you use the HDMI port that was included, you could only go up to 1080p. But if you use the Thunderbolt connector, you can go all the way up to 2K at 60 hertz. So Thunderbolt 2 came out a couple years later in 2013. On Thunderbolt 2, you could actually put multiple monitors this time, where the first Thunderbolt, you could really only have one at the max resolution. So with Thunderbolt 2, you could either have one 4K display at 60 hertz, or you can have two 1440p displays, which is 2K resolution at 60 hertz. So Apple at least started introducing this on their MacBooks in the 2013, which is when their Retina series of laptops started coming out. Thunderbolt 2 offered more bandwidth. You got 20 gigabits per second, which means you could actually buy a external graphics card dock and have your Mac Mini or your MacBook have a discrete graphics card for you to play your games, or their intended purpose was to do a lot of hardcore video editing when you have the time to sit at a desk. You could do it with Thunderbolt 1, but it was a whole lot more limited because the bandwidth was literally cut in half, but it was doable. So again, Thunderbolt 2 uses the Displayport protocol to do its, display part, but now you could also do more than just one display. You can do multiple displays. You can get higher resolutions. And again, if you were willing to pay, almost $300 back in the day, you could buy a Thunderbolt dock. And you can actually still buy these today, a Thunderbolt 1 or 2 dock. And you can give an old computer that never had, like, let's say USB 2.0 or a external SATA connector, and give them those capabilities now. A little off topic here, but normally something like that on a 2011 MacBook or Mac Mini is kind of not worth it. But that option is there. So now we have Thunderbolt 3. Moving on to the next one, which is this one over here, which is the USB Type-C. And that one also uses a Displayport, but instead of using a full-size Displayport, it uses a USB Type-C, which probably if you have one of the new iPad Pros, you have one of the new MacBooks, or you're using any laptop or Android cell phone really made within the last couple of years, it probably uses this type of port. This is what we call a reversible connector. It doesn't matter which side it's on, it'll always work the same. Generally, USB-C is kind of also convoluted. I'm not going to really get into that in this video because I can make a whole video about it just by itself. And I don't think you guys really want to sit here and listen to me for 45 minutes just talking about the different types of connectors. So Thunderbolt 3 switched to the USB-C type here. And with Thunderbolt 3, you truly have data, video, and now you also have power. A lot of these can do up to 100 watts worth of power, which means you could power the whole display, have your audio, your video, and maybe even some USB ports on the side to plug in drives, all from one connector. So also, by the way, the Displayport, whether it's the mini Displayport or the full-size Displayport, does audio as well as video. So with Thunderbolt 3, this was released back in 2015. You could do either one 4K display at 120 hertz, you could do a 5K display at 60 hertz, or you could do two 4K displays at 60 hertz. So now we're seeing here we have multiple possibilities. Higher resolutions other than 4K are now being marketed to consumers. Again, you don't, as a typical person, you may not need 5K, but even 4K is really nice on the eyes. Again, the higher resolutions, if you're like someone that's looking at a schematic all day, or you're making maps, I believe the term is cartography, or you're, an advertiser, setting up things for a big billboard, those higher resolutions are nice. Or if you're someone playing games and you have a really beefy graphics card and you want to be able to play 4K games without having this whole convoluted mess of wires and cabling behind your monitor, now you have the capability of doing everything through one port. Thunderbolt 4 was released late last year, around the end of the year. It allowed a 4K display of 120 hertz or 2 at 60 hertz, a 5K at 60 hertz, and now we even got 8K at 60 hertz. So now again, more and more is being added to this USB-C port. USB-C is actually really nice. You can plug it in and it basically does everything you ever want. It also does it really fast. I believe USB 4 has 40 gigabits per second, which also allows you to get an external graphics card, plug it into your laptop, your MacBook, your Mac Mini, and you can play games on it, do really intensive video editing on it. And now instead of being chained to your desk for everything to do it, you can literally buy one computer and it does it all, and you just plug it in when you need it. So lastly, we have the most common one here, which is the HDMI. HDMI stands for High Definition Multimedia Interface. This is generally what every television you have in your house has. It has a bunch of them. The latest version is 2.1. There's a whole bunch of previous versions, just as there are of Displayport and Thunderbolt. The latest version of HDMI can do up to 8K at 120 hertz. The nice thing about HDMI is it supports something called audio return channel, also known as ARC. So let's say you have a TV and you have your PS5 connected along with your Fire Stick or your Apple TV and your sound bar. So if you're playing on your PS5 but you don't want the audio to come out of the TV speakers, you can have it route through the TV to the sound bar without having to run separate cables from each device to the sound bar. So it limits the amount of cabling you need in order to, get things working behind your TV or your monitor. But the thing is, you need not only the cable to be able to have the ARC channel to work, the device that you want to use, such as your PS5, has to support it, your TV has to support it, your soundbar has to support it, and the cable you're using has to support it. So again, it's one of those niche features, but the option is there if you want it. The latest version of that is called eARC, which is enhanced, audio return channel. It means you can do more things with it. You can send more data downline. It's the more common one. Basically, HDMI, to sum it up, is used for the home, while Displayport is used for business and for hardcore gamers that want, the most out of their rig as possible. So again, we do this as part of consultation. When you come up to us and you ask, I need a monitor, I have this computer, or I just need a whole setup. Can you please give me a rundown of what I need in order to get my work or my pleasure or anything I want done? Usually, again, we will do Displayport, but sometimes, like if you're that person that wants their home audio set up and you want, the least amount of cables showing, we will use the HDMI with the ARC feature. And that's basically it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all have a good day, and I hope you learned something.